It's Saturday evening. It's time to talk about the very best comic books in the entire world this week with our good friend Drew. What up, dude?
What up, man? Hey, happy Saturday. It's a snowy covered Saturday here in Indy. It's NFL wildcard weekend, but let's talk about the best comics of the week first.
Now, a few weeks back, I asked you what your comic book that you were most anticipating in 2025 was. In fact, your answer was Aquaman from Jeremy Adams. It comes out this week, Aquaman #1, Jeremy Adams, John Timms on art. And by and large, I think this is a pretty significantly good comic book. There are a couple of flaws in it, but I really especially like the new kind of characterization on Aquaman. A lot of times he's presented as kind of aloof, not only when he's in Atlantis, but also when he's on the surface area and all that kind of stuff. He's much more relatable here, kind of got a sense of humor. So I really enjoyed like a much better, clear idea who Arthur Curry is. And then when he's fighting enormous water kaiju stuff, it's all really, really fun and well illustrated by John Timms. So I think on the whole, this is a pretty successful comic book. Definitely a recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, this book did not disappoint at all. This was action-packed and beautifully illustrated. Yeah, like you said, we're following Arthur Curry, King of Atlantis, and his newfound aquatic powers. Mira, who has the same abilities, is mentoring him along the way. But can he control the water? You got to read to find out. And on top of that, like you said, we got huge aquatic kaiju battles in this, and a mystery with Atlantis that ends with Aquaman taking a little trip. But the last page will have everyone saying, "Oh shit." This issue did not disappoint and gave me everything I wanted, and not just the first issue, but an Aquaman comic. John Timms' art, in my opinion, is perfect for the story, and I believe is better than his action comic stuff. And yeah, this is a strong recommend for Aquaman. Great jumping on point for anyone new to the character. The king is back, baby.
It's mostly reestablishing Arthur Curry, but you kind of needed to do that because he's been out of DC Comics mainline continuity for so long. We really haven't even had an ongoing Aquaman book, I believe, for over 3 years at this point. So he's kind of picking up the pieces and reintroducing the character, which I do think was absolutely necessary on number one issue. There are a lot of tie-ins to other things that have happened in the past. It's absolutely tied in to DC All-In Special. Mm-hmm. Certainly it's tied into Absolute Power, but it also goes further than that. There's even editor notes that this is a part of or tying into Drowned Earth, which I think happened 7 or 8 years ago when Tom King was on Batman and Dan Abnett was on Aquaman. There's like a crossover between those two. It's also tying in elements from like a Brave and the Bold series that I don't think anyone's reading. So it almost felt like Jeremy Adams was tasked with, hey, we want you to include this, this, and this. And he was like, well, I could do this over 4 issues and make it kind of boring, or I could speed through it and get to the shit that's actually going to be fun. And I do appreciate that he decided to get to the fun part.
Me too. And honestly, after reading it, it's a setup issue, which makes it a great jumping on point for new readers. And if people have seen the Aquaman films, and maybe if they did like those films and they wanted to learn more about this character, this issue would be a great jumping on point for you to learn how awesome Aquaman is. But for me, really, like when I did see a lot of those editor notes, but for me, it's like, I'm not going to go back and read those. I don't want to, because I'm focused on this story. If I'm, because we've read those stories, we've read most of the stories, and the Abnett one's good. Some of the others, they're okay. But I enjoy this issue for what it is, being a good setup for new readers, as well as being a fun action-packed book, as well as very well illustrated. John Timms does a great job here with the art.
Absolutely. So it gets a very high recommendation for me. Now, my expectations were honestly kind of through the roof. Does it quite meet those? Maybe not. As a setup issue, there are some restrictions on the storytelling and stuff like that. But there are some enormous changes to the status quo of Atlantis itself by the time this issue is over. And Aquaman finds himself in a very distressing place by the end of it. Overall, I think a lot of people are going to love this one. And Jeremy Adams does it again. He's got another hit on his hands.
Yes, he does. Good for him. DC needs it. And I was talking about this last night with Max, Josh, and my brother Kyle, that Jeremy Adams will be the superstar at DC Comics in 2025 and 2026. I'm saying it now. He will be writing the big events and stuff. This is only the beginning. Watch this guy closely. Pick up all the stuff he's doing. Aquaman, Flash Gordon, Green Lantern. He is a superstar.
He's starting to give me some Jeff Johns vibes, but we'll see how that plays out. He's only been writing comic books for a few years, but he's been absolutely awesome at it. So really appreciate that, and definitely suggest, if you didn't see the Miller Time interview with Mark Miller, go check that out. with Jeremy Adams as well. That was a whole lot of fun. Now on to the indie comic books, because we definitely got some indie comic books to recommend. Guer number 10, Jeff Johns writing, Gary Frank back on as the artist. And we've got some interesting things going on here. Guer, seemingly anytime that he's set off, he might just blow up and become the glowing man, even though he's got the rods in his back and all that kind of stuff. Definitely putting Nate the Atomic Knight in some apparel here. We see the return of Junkyard Joe, which I thought was interesting. But my favorite part is when Nate the Atomic Knight and Guer save this family like in a van or whatever, and then he gives them instructions to go back to the town that they just left and were kicked out of and be like, make sure you tell them Nate and Guer sent you. They're going to love you guys. It's like, nah, they're going to kick them out if they tell them that. You tell them you accidentally found that town.
I love Nate. Nate is that guy. Just he's got a heart of gold. He's not the smartest guy, but he has good intentions. He has well intentions. The opening of this caught me off guard. I wasn't expecting to see this from Tariq, our lead character, who becomes Guer, but good for him. What he was doing, leading up to what happens, because it's all the more tragic knowing what will become of his family and the world afterwards. But like I said, as the story progresses, something happens to Guer where he has like a nuclear spur gout, and if that's not bad enough, we get the return of Junkyard Joe. And will Guer overcome this problem? Will Nate shut up long enough to help him out? And who is this beautiful new character that we were introduced to here at the end? You got to read to find out. It's great having Gary Frank back on the art. It's flipping beautiful. It's very fast paced, action packed, and it's mysterious. Yeah, strong recommend for Guer.
Yeah, it was definitely a return to form. And I did think it was funny that Nate being so annoying is what's actually making him go nuclear. So I thought that was funny. Also going to recommend Transformers 16, Daniel Warren Johnson writing, Jorge Corona on art. You get a lot of good fan service in here. Bruticus versus the Devastator. Are you freaking kidding me? That actually happens in this comic book. We also get Soundwave versus Starscream, his tank mashup guy, which is great. We even see like that Transformer train thing, or I'm sorry, the Decepticon train thing arrive. Interesting things going on. We've got different pockets of Autobots and Decepticons kind of all over the place, jumping on those stories, but the really big time action pieces, and also seeing Optimus Prime having a bit of a Tariq moment where maybe he can't control himself, causing a little bit of devastation, which was out of character. He's been having some weird stuff going on with him there, but Transformers continues to be magnifique.
Yeah, I loved this issue. We follow several small groups in this issue, and each one is cool, fun, and unique in its own way. Like you said, we got Cliffjumper and Alita who are working together despite their very different points of view. And Cliffjumper may have something that could change the tide of the current events. We got Starscream and Thundercracker going at it, which has a moment that legitimately had me laughing out loud. Not laughing on the inside, laughing out loud. And we got Spike and RC with Carly hunting down Ultra Magnus. We also have the emergence of an Autobot we haven't seen yet. And we got Bruticus versus Devastator.
Trailblazer.
I didn't want to spoil it. Yeah, Trailblazer. And we got Optimus Prime dealing with the insanity on top of these physical outbursts with his Megatron blaster. But like you said, Bruticus and Devastator in this. It is beautiful. In the ending of this issue, if it doesn't have you saying, oh shit, or oh no, or finally, then you're simply not living. You're not alive. But the standout, Jorge Corona, he steps up his game big time in this issue, and there's legitimately 2 to 3 pages in here that I believe are some of the best illustrated pages of the series so far. Transformers continues to be one of the best books in the industry, and if you're not reading this, fix yourself now. Roll out to your LCS and ask for Transformers.
As great as I think the Aquaman 1 final page reveal is, and it's absolutely awesome, the final page reveal in Transformers 16, even bigger somehow. Yes. Also going to recommend Nemesis Rogues Gallery, number 5, Mark Miller writing, Valerio G and Giordano on art. I've been kind of stuck between Nemesis Rogues Gallery and Nightclub as which is the better, or the one Miller World project that I prefer that's coming out right now. I've been leaning towards Nightclub, but not anymore, not after this issue. This thing was an absolute banger. You finally see Nemesis heading out to, I guess it's Epstein Island number 2, and all the weird stuff that's going on there because he wants to rob everybody blind. And it literally looks like he is in a no-win situation. There's no way he could legitimately get out of it. And Mark Miller, the wonderful writer that he is, he gets himself out of it. Not only does he get himself out of it, he gets all the payback that you could ever want in your entire lifetime with some of the most badass art that you will see all week of all the great comic books. And we've got John Timms, Gary Frank, Jorge Corona. I think this is the best illustrated cover to cover comic book that we get this week. I've been very stuck on what's the best comic book of the week. Is it Batman and Robin 17? Is it Nemesis Rogues Gallery 5? And it's got to be Nemesis Rogues Gallery 5. That ending and the final fate of Rookie, I did not see coming, but I completely should have seen coming. And this is just a stellar comic book.
Yeah, like you said, Wes, I've been so neck and neck with Nightclub and Nemesis Rogues Gallery. Which one was clearly better? And Nightclub was edging it out for quite some time, but this issue, like you said, this issue goes out with not just a bang, but several bangs. We got Nemesis going undercover at, like I said, Epstein Island too, more or less. And if you have money, anything can happen. Or you want to see a grown man fucking an alligator, well, hey, not only does Money Plane have it, but this island does. And let's just say this may not end well for the billionaire scumbags on this island. I'm not going to get into detail with what happens on this island, but I want people to read this. The shock and surprise are part of the fun with this series. Mark delivers an action-packed conclusion, and Valerio Giordano continues to show off his incredible artistic talents as well as his uncanny skills with the human eyes in conveying insanity. Strong recommend for Nemesis Rogues Gallery. Mark continues to show how it's done by not decompressing his stories and not subverting expectations. He did this all in 5 issues. I mean, this is something if the big two were doing this would have been done over like 15, 20 issues. He shows you what can be done in just 5. And if you're not reading Nemesis or Transformers or Batman or any of the books this week, fix yourself. Go to your LCS now.
I will say this. I think this is the first comic book that I would consider to be like a 10 out of 10, 5 out of 5, perfect comic book. Writing, art, everything kind of working together, completely in sync with each other. Normally, that would be cause for an entire video on the channel. But the stuff that goes on in this comic book probably isn't going to be good for YouTube. Like, it's so far over the top. But it's so well done. But it's basically a perfect comic book. Unfortunately, Marvel didn't even deliver us anything competent, let alone perfect this week. I got nothing to recommend from Marvel. ASM was maybe the best thing, and it wasn't even that good. It was just much better than it was.
Like you said, it was a big old goose egg from Marvel this week. I read everything that came from Marvel, and it was just straight up embarrassing. And like you said, Amazing Spider-Man was barely recommended, but it's nothing we haven't already read from Amazing Spider-Man so far. It's same old, same old. It's like, let's get on with this. And it's tedious at this point. It's more work than enjoyment at this point with Marvel.
Absolutely. We got one more recommendation. I mentioned it earlier. Batman and Robin 17, Phil Kennedy Johnson writing, Javi Fernandez on art. On almost any other week in the past year, this would have been my best comic book of the week. It's absolutely phenomenal. And the way that Phil Kennedy Johnson is characterizing the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Damian, I think is outstanding. And the idea that Damian Wayne is a young kid, and yes, he's known, a lot of weird things in life, being raised in the League of Shadows and all that kind of stuff, and then becoming Batman's ward and his sidekick and all these things, and then having his eyes open that there might be things out there that are more important or more enjoyable than fighting crime, and maybe he would like to go discover those things or have an opportunity to do that. I wouldn't call it unhinged, but the very negative reaction from Bruce Wayne I do find very, very compelling and really well done. On top of the fact that you do have Memento and all these other things happening around him that are absolutely fascinating. But I am so on board Batman and Robin, it's not even funny right now.
Yeah, this is a blast. And real quick before I get to my review of the book, but I do agree with what you said about Bruce. There is a lot of jealousy with Bruce right now because that doctor, more or less, as well as the journals from Thomas Wayne, are more or less a stand-in father, mentor figure for Damian now, as to looking at a different an outlook on life, by healing people, not hurting people. And Bruce is going to have some jealousy because Damian is not pretty much going with him on these journeys or on these adventures with him. But yeah, so we get to learn more about Bruce's past and how a mission hunting Memento intersected with the events currently taking place in Gotham. Batman's been exposed to a gas that hasn't brought about his own fears, but other tragedies that have happened in the past. And on top of that, Batman is beyond physically exhausted from not only having to deal with this mysterious rogue from his past, but riots on his own, since Damian is on his own journey of self-discovery. But this doctor mentoring him, I think there's something fishy to him. I think this doctor more or less is a plant, I think, to deviate to take away Damian from Bruce. That's my theory on this. And that's where we're going to go in the story. But regardless, Batman will need some help, and the help he gets, no one with their right mind would want by the end of the story. Yeah, this continues to be a fun and interesting read by PKJ, and probably the best Bat title for me right now. Detective Comics being a second. But the voices, the motivations, solid, and the art by Javi Fernandez is unique and fits the story being told. Solid recommend for Batman and Robin.
I did like that Bruce Wayne, once he realizes that this Dr. Bashir might be being a good influence on Damian, is like, we're going to need to investigate that guy and find out any kind of ties he might have to Ra's al Ghul. He's being a little bit too good of an influence on Damian. I love that. That was so great. So that is our best of the week. There were several high-profile DC books that were pushed back a week. Hopefully, we'll get them next week, and we'll have an even bigger best of the week broadcast coming to you. Now, Drew, you did have Unholy Nightmare come out last year, fully funded it, delivered it. People have been talking about it. There might be a sequel, and you might have a little preview book coming up, exclusive to somewhere that people might not expect.
That's right, Wes. Yeah. What we're looking at here is the MegaCon exclusive cover for Unholy Nightmare #2 Preview Edition. This was illustrated by hand by the immensely talented Vu Don and will only be available in black and white. This will be extremely limited in quantity and will only be available at MegaCon next month. So be sure to stop by the TCM Press booth, say hi to me, and pick up a copy of this extremely beautiful and rare cover by Vu Don for Unholy Nightmare #2.
I hope all of you had an awesome new comic book reading week. We had some really strong stuff from DC and certainly independent comic books. Had a lot of fun talking about this. If you enjoy these types of conversations and reviews, but much, much bigger, I do want to invite you to come visit me on Thinking Critical Patreon. We had the How to Not podcast with our good friend Jim from Weird Science. There's a link in the video description. Jim and I do this, but it lasts almost 3 hours every single week, and we have a great time doing it. Hope to see you there very, very soon.